Chof Dalet Amud Beis. We'll begin Chof Dalet Amud Aleph, 17 lines from the bottom with the two dots. Iboilahu, the Gemara has a Shailam, Ma'ula Haskir Shel Chanukah B'Musafir. Are you maskir al anisim? We know we're maskir al anisim, which Shemona Esrei and Chanukah. If Chanukah, it's Rosh Chodesh, it's Rosh Chodesh Teves. If it's Shabbos Chanukah, and you daven Musaf, do you also mention al anisim in the Tefillah of Musaf? What's the shaila? Came in the last bay Musaf b'didei Chanukah itself. If not for Rosh Chodesh, if not for Shabbos, there's no Musaf on Chanukah. Chanukah itself does not require Musaf. So lemad karina. So it's not a tefillah that comes on account of Chanukah. So perhaps we should say that we are not obligated. We don't mention al anisim. Or perhaps we say Yomi Masechet Shabbat. So do we say no? The day is chay bar b'tefillas. Rosh Chodesh, Shabbos, there's a chiyuv of 4 tefillas. You have to daven musaf. And today, the day is Chanukah. So whatever tefillah is davened on that day, you do have to mention al anisim. That's the shayla. Rav Huna Rav Yehuda Damet Havayu in a mosque. They say you do not mention it. Rav Nachman Rav Yechna Damet Havayu. They both say maskir that you are meant. You do mention it. Rabbi Rav Yehuda Rav Huna Rav Yehuda the Ravu. That they said those shitas of Rav Huna Rav Yehuda that say Eino maskir that you do not mention it. That is the shita of Rav. The Amar of Gidol Amar Rav, he said, Rosh Chodesh Shechali is b'Shabbos. If Rosh Chodesh falls on Shabbos, not dealing with Chanukah now. You're dealing with Rosh Chodesh falls out on Shabbos. Hamaftir ben Navi b'Shabbos. The one who has the maftir, the haftarah, and it's sort of lahaskir shel Rosh Chodesh. In the brachos of the haftarah, you do not mention Rosh Chodesh. You mention Shabbos, but not Rosh Chodesh. Shel Malei Shabbos ein Navi b'Rosh Chodesh, because on Rosh Chodesh itself, there's no haftarah, there's no Navi. The only reason there's haftarah is because of Shabbos. So therefore, there's no mentioning of the Rosh Chodesh because the maftir doesn't come because of Rosh Chodesh. It only becomes because of Shabbos. So similarly, we should say the same thing over here by the Musaf, that Chanukah doesn't require the tefillah of Musaf. So therefore, there should be no mention of al anisim in the tefillah musaf. Gemara says no. Mi dami. How can you compare it? Hasam navi b'Rosh Chodesh like a klal. Over there is no navi in Rosh Chodesh whatsoever at no part of the day. But hachi yisa ba'arvis v'shalchus mincha. But here on this very same day that there's the musaf on Rosh Chodesh or Shabbos, we do mention al anisim that day. We mention it in Arvis, in Shachris and Mincha, so it's a day that the other tefillahs do have al anisim. So perhaps we should say, therefore, that it's a yaim shechai v'dalat tefillahs, and perhaps the musaf should also have al anisim. In the case of Rav, the Rosh Chodesh doesn't require in any which way a maftir, but over here the tefillahs of this day in the other Shemona Esrei, Zvar B'Shachos, Mincha do require an al anisim. So perhaps the 4th tefillah of Musaf, even though Chanukah in itself does not require a Musaf, but this day is a day of al anisim, perhaps it should be in Musaf as well. So you cannot compare it to this case. Ella, perhaps we should compare it to Lahadam. It's the following case. Yom if Yom Tov falls out on Shabbos, Hamaftir bin Navi b'Mincha, the one who has the Haftarah and Mincha. So Rashi explains that in those days they used to also lay the Haftarah at Mincha time. But he said, Rashi brings down that from the Ga'inim, that in the times of when they lived in Persia and the Parsium, they were mevatel that minhag, and once they were mevatel it was never reinstated. Al kol ponim, he says, Yontiv shechalias b'Shabbos hamaftir b'Navi b'Mincha b'Shabbos ein tzorach lahaskar shel Yontiv. You do not have to mention Yontiv. Shel malei Shabbos ein Navi b'Mincha b'Yontiv, because Lemaisa, the Yontiv does not require a haftarah. There's no haftarah for Yontiv. the only haftarah is because of Shabbos. On account of Yontiv, there's no haftarah. Now, even though this is Yontiv, it's Yontiv Shechal Yos b'Shabbos, during the tefillas of the day, we do mention Yontiv, we mention Yalav Yavai, but Yontiv itself has no requirement for Haftarah. The only reason that you would say the Haftarah is on account of Shabbos. By Mincha, the only reason you'd say the Haftarah is on account of Shabbos, Lefi their minute, is only count of Shabbos. So even though that in the tefillas of the day you mention Yontiv, but not by Haftarah, so therefore, similarly, we should say that you do not mention Al Nisif and Musaf on Shabbos Chanukah. However, the Gemara says, the halach is not like all of these, like Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda. And Rashi says, V'Rav Gidel V'Rach Tavuya. So we'll see in a moment. Rashi says, the halach is not like any of them. Ela ki had Amar Yishu ben Levi. Yom Kippurim shechal yos b'Shabbos. If Yom Kippur falls out on Shabbos, hamispal ne'ilah, the one who davens ne'ilah, tzorech lahazker shel Shabbos. You do have to mention Shabbos in tefillas ne'ilah. Now, even though on a regular Shabbos there's no ne'ilah, the ne'ilah is only coming on account of Yom Kippur. Nevertheless, it's Shabbos. You have to mention Shabbos because you have to mention Shabbos. Yom Hushin is chai barba tefillas, because this day is a day that you're chayv in arba tefillas. The rest of the tefillas you mentioned Shabbos. Here also in the Ilah, it's a chayvus hayayim, and for any tefillah during this day you have to mention Shabbos. So therefore we say also by Chanukah, and it's Shabbos Chanukah, you have to mention Al Nisim and Musaf. So that's what he says the halach is, and therefore you do have to mention Al Nisim and Musaf Shabbos Chanukah. But it seems to be a stereo Hilchsa. I'm not Hilchsa Rav Yishu ben Levi. You're telling me that the halach is Rav Yishu ben Levi that says you mention in the Ilah, you mention Shabbos, but we know that halach is also like Rava. Damar Rava Yomtiv Shechal Yos b'Shabbos. If it's Yomtiv on Shabbos, Shaliach Tzibur Yoyel Lefnei Ateva Arvis, the Shaliach Tzibur on Mariv, Ina Tzorach Lahasker Shal Yontiv, in the Tefillah of Magen Oves, you mention Shabbos, but you do not have to mention Yontiv. Why Shal Moli Shabbos ain't Shaliach Tzibur Yored Arvis B'Yontiv? Because on a regular Yontiv, you don't have the Tefillah of Magen Oves. So it's only coming because of Shabbos, so therefore only Shabbos is mentioned. So it seems to be a stira to what we just said. We don't say over here is that it's a Yom Shechai B'Dalet Tefillos. More answers Hachiyash. Even on Shabbos, it's not really an absolute chiyuv. It should not be theoretically a real chiyuv to say Magen Oves, because really there's no chiyuv to say it per se. Now, the Rabbanon only instituted it because of a sakana. It's not really a chayvus hayyim. It's instituted because of sakana. What was the sakana? Rashi explains, because people, the shuls were out away from the city, out in the fields, and if people would come late, and they would till the time they finished davening, if the rest of the tzibur would have completed already, and they would have left, they would be on their own. And they would be alone out away far from the yeshiva, far from the city, and it would be sakana to be alone over there. It would be a dangerous place. So they instituted this added tefillah so that by the time these latecomers finish, the tzibur will also have a prolonged davening, and they'll finish at the same time so they won't be left alone. Now Rashi explains that during the week, this was not such a concern. They did not institute the tefillah, because during the week, these type of people, that when we're working, then they would daven and mariv at home. On Shabbos, they came to shul, but they came somewhat late. On Yontiv, you didn't have that concern, because on Yontiv, they would be there, they would not be coming late for the special occasion of Yontiv. So it's only mishum sakana. It's not an absolute chiyuv. So therefore, even on Shabbos, it's not a chayvus hayyim. Aval hacha yom hushin is chayv barba tefillas. But over here, it's the day that's chayev in dalet tefillas. So therefore, once you have to mention it in the other tefillas, you have to mention it on Musaf and Chanukah as well. So as we mentioned, less helchosak chol nishmaitza, which Rashi says to mean, and the halachas are not like Rav Huna, Rav Yehuda, Rav Gidel, Rav Tavuya. Therefore, According to Rashi and the Ramban passes this way as well, that Rosh Chodesh, Shabbos Rosh Chodesh, therefore he says the halacha is therefore you should mention Rosh Chodesh in the Haftarah and the bracha of the Haftarah. You should mention Rosh Chodesh. However, Taisus argues, the Balmor, they argue on that, and the Ramah paskins that we are noyeg like Taisus, and therefore on Shabbos Rosh Chodesh we do not mention Rosh Chodesh in the Birchas Haftarah. Therefore, on Shabbos Chol HaMoed, similarly on Shabbos Chol HaMoed Pesach, we do not mention Pesach in the Birchas Haftarah. However, the Magen Avraham brings down, and he says that on Sukkot we do mention it. Why is that? Because on Sukkot there are different korbanos. Every day has different korbanos, and therefore it's a reason to treat it in a significant way, and therefore he says that we do mention it on Chol HaMoed Sukkot. I was brought down B'Shem Goyen that we do not mention it on Chol HaMoed and Sukkot either. So this is different minhagim. On Chol HaMoed Pesach we do not mention the Pesach in the Birchas Haftarah. On Rosh Chodesh we do not mention the Birchas Haftarah. They're chaluk yedeyas, they're different minhagim legabe Chol HaMoed Sukkot, whether we do or not. So the Mishnah we learned that the Tanna Kama said you cannot use chalev. Chalev cannot be used for a fuel. He says that in an unqualified way, that means whether it's mavushal or not mavushal, whether it's cooked or not, it can't be used. Nocham Amadai makes a difference between, he differentiates between mavushal and mavushal, and he says that if it's chalev that's mavushal, that it's cooked, that you could use it. Nocham Amadai says that it's a with the Nochamare Omer Madlikim B'Chela Mavushal. And then the Mishnah says V'Chachama Moimim Echad Mavushal V'Achashena Mavushal Ein Madlikim Boy. It doesn't make a difference. It's unqualified. Now it seems to be that the Chomim are saying the same thing as the Tanna Kama. They're both saying that whether it's Mavushal or not, you can't use it. So for the Gemara, Chacham Hainu Tanna Kama, it's the same thing. The more answers, Iki Beinayim, the Rav Bruna, Amarav V'Loi Mesaimi. The nafkamina is the halacha of Rav Bruna Marav that if you add in a little bit of kosher oil, is that will that be machshir the chalev in such a case? And it's lo mesayim. It's not clear. One holds that it will, and the other one holds that it will not. If you add in a little bit, but it's not clear who says what. But that's a nafkamina between the two. And see the Mishnah, Ein Madlikim Shemen Sreifa B'Yanta. You cannot use Shemen Sreifa B'Yanta, which we learned earlier means Shemen of oil of Truma that became Tmeya, that has to be burnt. And if we're talking about that it's Yontiv, is Erev Shabbos is Yontiv, you cannot use that oil for the candles, for the Shabbos, for Neres, or Shabbos. The Gemara will explain what the reason is. You cannot use itrin, which Rashi says is derived from pitch. It's from the psolos of pitch. You can't use it because it gives off a foul odor. People will leave the room. They won't eat in the light. The takana of Ner Shabbos is shalom bayis. People should have light where they eat. It has a bad odor. People will leave. So it's not covered Shabbos. It's mutter. With all the oils. B'shem and shumshem with sesame seed oil. B'shem and agoizim, oil from nuts. B'shem and snoinas, from radishes. B'shem and dogim, from fish. B'shem and pekuas, from gourds. B'itron, and this itron, and with neft. And also with itron and neft. Rashi says neft is also a oil which has a bad smell, and it's also derived from pitch, and it has a bad smell. And however, you could use it. Rav Tarfon Omer in Madlikin el b'shemen zayis bilvad. Rav Tarfon says only olive oil.